To the show, the Ritesh Bawri Show. It is my proud privilege to welcome Dad to the show. Dad wears many hats. He's an entrepreneur, has always been ever since I can remember. He's also an innovator in many ways. He owns almost 10 or 12 patents to his name. He's someone who thinks big, has a big vision, not just for himself, for his family or his work, but also for the nation. He is one of those people who's been a mover to initiate this thing called the Atal Innovation Mission, which has absolutely revolutionized the way children are tinkering, playing, and experimenting in laboratories set up in their schools. Dad's someone that I've learned a lot from. Values, philosophy, approach to life, how to remain calm. He's been called the laughing Buddha by more people than I can remember. Today what we're going to do is try and understand his mindsets, certain key principles that he lives by, things that have inspired me to be a better person all the time. It is my proud privilege to welcome Dad to the show. Hi Dad, I'm actually particularly excited to have you on this show. All of us have learned so much from you over the years. It's just not us as children, but I think wider society is widely acknowledged. The fact that you're a man of wisdom, you're a man of insight, and spending even half an hour with you leaves somebody with lessons that they can take home. And so I think I'm actually very, very excited to have this conversation with you. I think I'm going to learn something fresh, but I'm sure the other people listening will also learn something from you. You've taught us a lot. We are who we are because of what you've taught us, the values that Mom has sort of imbibed in us, the lessons of life, how do you live life, keeping your word. But among all these lessons, there's one particular lesson that I still struggle with. And that's just something that, at some points in time has also been annoying for me in some ways, which is the fact that when a house is burning, you're the one person who's found laughing. You've been called the laughing Buddha. I know you've even been gifted a laughing Buddha as symbolic of, your personality. So what is this personality? What is this laughing Buddha? What gives you the ability to laugh no matter what is happening in your life? So, for example, as I said, your house could be burning, but you're sitting there and laughing and saying, all right, we'll just build a new one. So what's this mindset? Where did it come from?
Very interesting. I think, number one, everybody of us are born to be happy. But saying that you are born to be happy, you have to learn to be happy. What's your clarity about happiness? What is happiness itself? When I go and talk to hundreds of people, everybody tells me, I want to be happy. The first thing that you want is to be happy. But happiness doesn't come on its own. Happiness has to be learned. The way you learn mathematics, the way you learn language, the way you learn alphabets, the way you learn writing, similarly you'll have to learn to be happy. Now when I say learn to be happy, when I ask them the next question, oh, you want to be happy? Yes, I want to be happy. What's your definition of happiness? How have you felt happiness? Where has it come from? What should you do to get happy? Many of them are just at the level of saying, I want to be happy, without even understanding what is happiness. To many of them, it is somebody has acquired a car, let me get a car, and they feel, oh, material well-being is necessary to live in life, but material well-being doesn't give you happiness. If material well-being gave you happiness, the richest person would be the happiest person. Sure. I don't see them there. Sure. So it means that you have not understood what is happiness.
Sure.
Is there a definition? I mean, my definition of happiness is something which I'll fondly remember over a long period of time. That is what is happiness.
Sure.
My definition of happiness is that doing good gives me happiness. Creating something gives me happiness. Helping somebody gives me happiness. Now you find out your own method, or find out what actually is really giving you happiness, and then pursue that. You'll get your happiness. When we say that, well, you get your happiness, don't forget that there is another element which you have to be conscious of. That element is what is actually in your own hand.
Sure.
Now, what is in your own hand if you are actually doing it very seriously? And you have also learned to be what is happiness. Beyond that is not in your own hand. If it is not in your own hand and you get bothered about it, take it like this, that there's no single person at any point of time who does not have issues with life.
Sure.
People will have. Now, if you get bogged down with issues of life, you'll never be happy. So for me, at any point of time, if I have worked towards happiness, if I've learned happiness, and if I know what are my limitations and I have done whatever I can, then why should I not be happy?
Sure.
Under all circumstances, I should be happy.
Sure.
And this is what is happiness to me.
And that's what gives you that ability to laugh no
To
matter
laugh,
what.
no matter what. What can I do beyond that?
Sure.
What
Sure.
can I do beyond that?
So in some sense, what you're saying is you've taken the entire universe and you sort of boiled it down to a very, very, very small microcosm. And if I've understood what you said correctly, you're saying literally there are only two things. The first is to understand what is happiness or define for yourself what is happiness. And second, then do whatever you can to achieve that happiness. And then beyond that, you just accept, life for whatever it is. And if something has not gone your way, then you laugh.
But beyond that, be happy because you're born to be happy.
Yeah.
Being unhappy will not bring you anything better.
Sure. I wish, I could also in some sense imbibe what you're saying. We get trapped. We get caught, we get seduced by different kinds of attractions, whether it's material attraction, whether it's fame, whether it's fortune, whether it's whatever it is. I think we all get put into that mindset. You start competing with different people and you lose sight of actually what your goal in some sense is. But again, I just want to paraphrase what you're saying. You're literally boiling it down to two very simple things. Just kind of understand what is happiness and then do whatever best you can. And then that gives you the ability to laugh no matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah. I can say from personal experience that you're someone who lives it. This is not something that you're sort of writing about or you've sort of put a book on. This is something that you actually live by. You are able to be happy no matter what. If I were to ask you, does that also in some sense mean detachment? Like, are you then detached from everything else?
It's not detachment. It is that, you have to understand that your commitment should be second to none. But with the commitment, the result of what you are doing is not in your hand.
Sure.
If the result is not in your hand and you are getting caught by the result, that the result has not happened and so I'm unhappy.
Sure.
You'll never be happy because the results are not in your hand. The only two things which explain this to me is you're born with a karma, probably, and you also carry something of that karma in your present life. And if everything is dependent on karma, why should I do anything?
Sure.
Why should I do anything?
Sure.
No, it is not like that. What is dependent in this life is the effort that you make.
Sure.
And the effort that you make in this life has a bearing. And to me, this whole universe is nothing but energy.
Sure.
In different form, shape, intensity. You are conscious energy. And that's a very big difference. Means you can consciously do what you like.
Sure.
Now, if you consciously do what you like, that has an effect on, to my mind, this is energy, and the energy is manifested by two things. By the thought and the action that you have, that is energy.
Sure.
So what should be your thought? What should be your action? And these thoughts and action, and I have felt it all my life, my thoughts and action, whatever they are, affects me in my life.
Sure.
And this is what it is. It is, you call it grace, you call it energy, you call it God, you call it anything. It affects you in your life.
Sure. We'll definitely come back to this grace issue because this is something I definitely want to talk a lot more about. But I still wanted to get some sense of, you were talking about being focused on what you're doing, but not focused on the outcome. But isn't that counterintuitive in some sense? How could I be focused on the effort, but not be focused? So if I want to work to be a billionaire, then I'm motivated to be the billionaire. I'm tracking whether I am a billionaire or not. And then I'm making the effort to be a billionaire. But you're saying, no, don't worry about the outcome. Just worry about the effort. Isn't that counterintuitive?
No, it is not, because outcome, is it in your hand? It's just not in your hand.
Sure.
So that's where people get caught. What is in your hand is definitely the effort. And we can divide the effort by saying, do I do my strategy all right? Do I do my thinking all right? Is my behavior all right? These are all your efforts. These are all in your hand. You cannot get caught with your outcome. If you get caught with your outcome, you can never be happy.
So again, I'm just summarizing for the benefit of everyone. You're simplifying life in some sense. You're saying life is a very big canvas. I just want to reduce it to the smallest possible. And that is literally define what happiness means for you. And then put in the best effort. And then, whatever happens, happens. Don't unnecessarily be focused on outcome. Just focus yourself on the effort. I know I think about this a little bit myself, which is literally just taking one step forward every single moment, being present all the time, and doing my best. And then, whatever happens, happens. Is that kind of what you're trying to say?
Yes. And also, I believe that, if you don't get stressed on it, your ability to better outcome is much better.
Sure.
This is how I have observed, and this is what science also says.
Sure. Okay. I want to turn to this notion of grace. I've heard you talking about grace pretty much all my life. And the way I understand you defining grace is it's sort of an energy that comes to your aid every time in life, particularly in your difficult moments. So what is this grace? What do you mean when you say you have grace in your life? You're somebody who's always had grace in your life. What do you mean by this grace?
If I look at myself and try to understand who I am, it's a billion-dollar question which I really cannot answer. Who I am, where I've come from, where am I going, how it is. One of the only answers that I find is that probably you are born again. If you're born again and you're a soul, probably you carry certain things from your earlier life, which you will, let's say that it's karma that you carry. Which you, because of that, whatever many things that happen in this life may be because of the karma. And if karma is everything, then well, why should I do anything? But I don't think karma is everything. You are also the effort that you make in this life is also the energy that you have. And how do you manifest this energy? This energy, to my whole understanding, the whole universe is energy. The only difference between you as an energy and other energy is your conscious energy.
Sure.
That means you're consciously doing things. Now, what are you consciously doing? You're consciously doing two things, which is energy, which is your thoughts and your action.
Sure.
And I think they have a large amount of influence on what happens to you.
Okay.
Because that's the energy, and it is scientific that you attract the energy that you have in you. And what is the energy? The energy is the thinking and the actions that you are actually taking.
Sure.
Now, do and take those sort of actions which you would like others to take on you.
Sure.
That's good energy.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not good energy in whichever manner you want to define. This is energy, this is grace, this is God, this is whatever you may call. I think that has a very, very large effect on what you are doing and what happens to you. That is the energy. This is energy. This is grace, and I have felt it all my life.
Yes, I know. I've heard you talk about it so much. But again, there's duality in life. There'll always be multiple points of view. And I think the question that I always ask myself is two. One is, if you carry grace in your life, then shouldn't bad things not happen? And if bad things are constantly happening to you, then where is that grace? What was the point of that hard work or effort or whatever you did? Because you do look around, you see lots of people getting away with lots of things. The world abounds with evil. Lots of things happen that sometimes you even wonder how could God allow something like this to happen. So what's really going on there? Like, how come? If I have so much grace in my life, and let's say you have so much grace in your life, then you should have a worry-free, trouble-free, carefree life. But that's not true either. So what's the contradiction?
I think the only way to explain, you also carry karma.
Sure.
And you also carry grace. It's a balance of both. What is affecting who? Who's there? Is a computer? There's a God who's actually looking
manipulating.
At it.
Yes, sir. We don't know.
We don't know. And it's very, very difficult. Only sort of scientific explanation that I have is you are having karma, you're also having what you're doing in this life, the energy that you're practicing in this life.
Yeah.
And if you practice, that's all that you can do. Beyond that, if I worry, because I'm having good energy, why good things are not happening to me, I don't know. I cannot completely relate it and said, well, look, it's energy, it's karma, or it's the energy that I have. I wouldn't know.
But it's also vice versa, no? Like, for example, you see people doing lots of things and they seem to be able to just get away. They don't seem to suffer. They don't seem to be in any kind of difficulty. They're happy. Life goes on.
No,
where is that contradiction?
I do not agree with you when you say they're happy. I think internally they cannot be happy, because happiness, the way I have described happiness is not, say cheating somebody. That's not happiness.
Sure.
Probably, if not in this life, the next life, whatever, it will catch up with you.
Sure.
That's the only way I can explain. The only thing that I would like to have the right energy, the right thoughts, and the right action. It doesn't mean that 100% of me is always correct. It cannot be.
Sure.
It cannot be.
That's rational. Yeah, sure.
But then my effort is to have the right thoughts and to have the right actions. Whatever is the right action, you find your own way.
Correct. So basically you're saying in a nutshell that as far as you're concerned, to the best of your ability, you'd always want to do the right thing, the correct thing, the thing that you believe is the right thing to be done at that point in time. And if as outcome of that grace was in your life, great. If not, then that's also okay, because what can you do?
What can I do about it?
Wonderful. Okay, excellent.
And you see, the point to be understood is that there is only a limited thing that you can do.
Sure.
And that you should do correctly.
Sure. Let me switch gears a little bit. I think it also juxtaposes really well with another interesting aspect of sort of how you approach life, which is pattern recognition. You've taught us to read. I know I read a fair amount, but I don't think anywhere near as much as you read. Not only do you read books, but you also read magazines, you read newspapers. I know you've not missed a single India Today in the last 40 years, I think. And then what you're able to do really well is sort of discern patterns within the different pieces of information that you get. You can see things perhaps better than or faster than what others can see, certainly more than what I can see. What is this habit and what are you really doing? How are you making sense of all this information? And why can't I?
It's very simple and very interesting to understand what you're saying. It's what I would call is the hierarchy of thought.
Sure.
And if you look at the hierarchy of thought, what it is, you get data. What is superior to data is information.
Sure.
What is superior to information is knowledge.
Sure.
When you are reading a book, you're reading a magazine, you're talking to somebody, this all data, information, knowledge is all happening.
Sure.
What do you do with it? The important thing is that you should be able to convert this into what I say two other higher levels, which is intelligence and wisdom.
Sure.
So when you are acquiring any knowledge, data and information, you should keep in mind that you have to make it intelligent and you have to make it wise.
Sure.
So you then connect whatever you are learning, whatever you are getting, how do you connect it? One is you connect it that, well, what's your objective? If there is any objective, you see something, or can you connect this information to that information? For example, I connected the dots about 20 years back that how is it that an average person in this world today lives better than a Maharaja 200 years back?
Sure, you've talked about this, yeah.
It has happened because of a factor of what I say, technology, innovation and entrepreneurship. So I could connect these two things and I said, well, look, that means if you want to create wealth, these are the things which should happen. Now, this is the way you connect information.
Sure.
And when you connect the information like that to make it into intelligence,
sure,
you will be able to do it.
Sure. No, but is there a process? Is there a method? Is like, say, somebody who doesn't have the skill, and I want to also have my own crystal ball. I'd love to predict, 20 years from now, a certain thing is going to be the big thing in the world. How could I acquire such a skill?
So two things. First is you must understand that there is a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And in the hierarchy, it is not enough to have knowledge or information. It is important to make it intelligent,
sure,
to make it, to connect it to wisdom. This is the first thing that must be there in your mind whenever you're reading. This is my experience that I'm sharing. And the second thing is, do you have any understanding of what is the root cause? Knowledge for the sake of knowledge is of no use unless you're able to make some use of it.
Sure. So does it mean you read more? Does it mean you read varied? Does it mean you read, different kinds of contexts? How can, I think what I'm still trying to struggle with is if I were to acquire this skill, how could I acquire this skill? I understand you have it.
As I say, probably the only way is first to understand that, look, reading for the sake of reading is of not much of use because you have to make utility of it.
Sure.
So I have to read it. If I read it, am I able to connect it to something?
Sure.
If I'm able to read it, am I able to connect it to something? Recently, I got the Mahabharata in English, read it over a year, underlined it. Now I'm able to connect many things that I'm saying to that. Now that's what you should try to do.
Sure.
And that will come then. It will come. It's not that you need some sort of a great rocket science to do it. You have to be aware that, knowledge for the sake of knowledge is not enough. You have to convert it. And to convert it, what is your objective of that? Why has that been written in that manner? Is there a cause and effect on it? Keep it in your mind and then you are able to connect the dots.
Wonderful. So I think if I can paraphrase what you're saying, in some sense what you're saying is deliberate effort in reading, understanding, learning, and then very deliberately sort of trying to connect the dots for a specific purpose is perhaps that method that others could adopt as well. Is that correct?
Yeah,
if I were to take away,
you have to take away.
From tomorrow, not only am I going to read, but I'm going to read for a purpose, and then I'm very deliberately.
No, you may not read for a purpose, but connect it to a purpose.
Sure.
You may not read because you're reading something today, you're reading about CRISPR. Now, you may not read it for a purpose that, you're not going to tomorrow go and do something with CRISPR.
Sure.
But how do you connect it?
Sure.
How do you connect it to medical science tomorrow?
Sure.
Your genes can be edited, my goodness.
Sure.
So how do you connect it, you see?
Sure. Wonderful. Let's move the topic, let's move the conversation You're someone who can very famously compartmentalize. I know Bill Clinton has been renowned to be someone who can literally switch on and switch off. He could go to war at 9 a.m. and sort of go and do something completely different at 10 a.m. But again, from the little bit I've known you, I know you're someone who can easily compartmentalize. You can switch from one topic to the other. You can manage 10 things at the same time. It's actually tiring for the people around you, because here is this person who can literally run 10 sort of things at one point. Where for most of us, actually even doing 2 becomes very difficult. You get confused, you stop sort of understanding which one's your priority. So what is this skill? How are you compartmentalizing? Why are you compartmentalizing? What's the value of this ability to switch?
When you're asking this question, I mean, it's the first time that I'm thinking that I can compartmentalize. So how would I like to answer this? To answer this, I don't think that I compartmentalize. Compartmentalize means I'm doing 5 things at the same time. No, you cannot do 5 things at the same time. You can only do one thing at the same time. But you are able to switch from one thing to the other thing.
Sure.
I think that's what you're trying to mean by saying that. So how do you switch from one thing to the other? One of the things is that, well, in my mindset, I am totally committed to what I do, but I do not carry its burden.
Okay.
Because I do not carry its burden, all right, I keep this aside and take the other thing.
That's fascinating.
If I carry the burden, I don't think you can switch off, you see, because your mind is then burdened with whatever you are doing.
Yeah.
So here, I'll do one thing just now, and then another few minutes or in another second, you get to the other thing, because this burden is you're not carrying that burden. I think that's the way it is being done.
So in some sense, it's a light touch on whatever it is you're dealing with, and then you just
No, it's not light touch. It's very, very serious touch, very, very committed touch. But you are not carrying its burden.
Interesting.
Because the burden is what? Will it happen? Will it not happen? What can I do? What I cannot do? That's the burden that you're continuously carrying. No, I don't carry burden.
Sure.
It's not a light touch. It's a very, very serious touch in whatever I'm doing. I believe that whatever I take up, my effort should be second to none.
Sure.
So that's not a light touch. But it's a serious touch, but you are not carrying its burden.
That's really interesting, because when I went to the US, I think one of the things I learned over there was to multitask, that you're constantly doing 2 or 3 things. In fact, I think the reward in some sense was when you could do 3 things at the same time: talk on the phone, read a document, and perhaps eat your breakfast, because there was always so much to do. And I think the outstanding sort of students were those who could do 3, 4, 5 things even. But here you're really not talking about multitasking. You're talking about being very focused on one thing, just simply not carrying the burden of that thing beyond to the next one. Switching and then going to the next one, doing whatever you need to do, and then moving on to the third. And that gives you the ability to do many, many things in your life. It's a fascinating skill. I think it's very interesting.
It's not a skill. You've learned that, well, look, if you do it this way, you are doing it better. Right?
And that allows you to compartmentalize in some sense.
Quite right.
But don't you get stressed? Like, say you spend 1 hour dealing with a crisis. Isn't that stressful?
No, I think stress is always relative. Stress will always be there, because as a human being, I try to go without what is stress. It's your unfulfilled desires, your feelings and emotions, your thoughts, which is giving you the stress. So it's a question of 2 things. Well, how much do you carry and how long you carry it?
Sure.
So if you can learn, stress will always be there. I mean, life itself is feeling and emotions, because without that we are robots.
Sure.
But the stress is, how long are you carrying? How seriously are you carrying?
Sure.
I try to say that, look, if somebody is doing it for 5 days, I'll do it for 5 minutes.
Sure. And that's a skill that you've acquired, isn't it? To just sort of shed and move on.
Skill and the understanding that, look, carrying that is not helping me. What is helping me is to understand what I can do, and am I doing it to the best. If a strategy is not working, do I change my strategy?
Sure.
Do I do something else? Do I prepare myself better? What have I not done? I'll do that.
Sure. Now, there's a fascinating learning, and I think that metric that you threw out, that if someone's getting stressed for 5 days on one particular topic, if I could reduce that to 5 minutes, I've just saved 4 days, 23 hours and 55 minutes for myself. I think that's just absolutely fascinating. It's definitely a lesson I will take away, that how can I shrink, in some sense, the time spent on sort of carrying things from one task to the other. I think that would definitely free up a whole lot of my time, because you carry things. And that's actually what prevents you, in some sense, from switching between, let's say, doing this show to randomly in the middle, if I had to go out and sort of cook. It would be difficult, because I don't want to cook right now. I'm just so focused on this task. It's just impossible. Even something as trivial or as natural as cooking would be extremely hard. I think that's just fascinating. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. I'd love to talk about habits. I'll just give you a little bit of context. 7 years ago, when I discovered good health, as you know, I was diabetic, I was hypertensive, I had asthma, I had acidity, I had terrible sleep and fatigue issues. And in a span of about 3 months, I was able to reverse mine. And you were one of the first people I actually came and spoke to about what I'd done. And what I found was literally in a span of 24 hours, not only did you adopt what I'd suggested, but you've carried it through for the next 7 years. The science says that, building habits is difficult. It can take anywhere from 7 days to even 7 months. The science is not actually very clear. Again, it depends on, how much inertia you have or what's the context in which you're trying to build a habit. But you've been someone who can just quickly, pick up a habit and then carry it. So what is this skill? How are you able to so quickly adopt habits? When most people stop, we just, turned over a new year and people make New Year resolutions. But they say 19 January is the day when most New Year resolutions sort of fall apart. But you're someone who can just make a resolution at any point in time of the year and then just carry through with it. What's really the skill or habit or capacity that you have?
So 2 things in here. When we say habit, I think we are wanting to say that we'll have a better habit.
Or a good habit.
Sure. Change of a habit means for something for the good.
Sure.
And the second thing which is here is that, look, any habit, to my understanding, is very difficult. I may be able to change, but it's not that well. I have seen telling a person to wear a watch from one hand to the other. It's uncomfortable for a few times. That's a simple thing to be done, but it's uncomfortable. So any habit to adopt is not comfortable, let us put it like this. But then when we are talking of a habit, of a change of a habit, it's for what? It's for my own good.
Sure.
If it is for my own good, then I must have the self-discipline. I believe that the first control, change, or anything that anybody does is on the self.
Sure.
And that self, I must have that self-discipline. If I feel it is right, I must do whatever it requires. It may be difficult, it may be uncomfortable. So what? I must do it, and I must do it, and I do it. It has to be as simple as that, you see.
Sure.
If you adopt that mindset that, look, I'm responsible for myself, I have also self-control over myself. So if I have self-control, if I say, no, look, I will now not eat ice cream anymore, then I don't eat ice cream anymore because it's my own self-control.
Sure.
For my own self-good.
Sure.
And you're responsible. Nobody else is responsible for your good. This is the way I look at changing habits.
So, that's really interesting what you say. But, when you contradict that with the millions of people out there who say similar things to themselves. So, I will exercise, I will eat better, I will stop drinking, I will sleep more, whatever it is. But what is that gap between their desire and their ability to convert? I mean, I do understand you said, listen, it's about being responsible.
Your own self-control over yourself. I mean, at the end, how are you doing it? You are doing it by telling your mind and telling yourself that, look, I have to do it and I will do it. And that self-control is the first self-control that you have for anything.
Or the first habit, actually, that you should acquire.
The first habit you should have. I will have my self-control.
Sure.
It's difficult, it may be uncomfortable, all that will be there.
Yeah.
But look at it another way, that if there is a habit which you acquire, which is good for you, let's say a habit of health, and if you don't do it, it's worse for you.
Sure.
The suffering that you have, the pain that you have today will be multiplied exponentially.
Correct.
So, are you not responsible for yourself to be able to do it?
Sure.
That's the way I look at it.
No, it's actually very intelligent. Because in some sense you're saying ignorance is bliss. So as long as I didn't know I needed to do something,
right. Yeah,
I could probably forgive myself. But once I've known that there is something I need to do and that's good for me, then actually not doing it is absolutely not acceptable. And the first habit I should acquire is the habit of being able to build a habit. Yes. That's very interesting. Okay, fascinating. All right. Let's change topics again. There's so much to learn from you. There's a wonderful term called Shoshin in Zen Buddhism, which in some sense is to indicate a beginner's mind. Whenever you approach a topic, you start that topic with a completely blank slate. You don't have any preconceived notions. It's almost a childlike curiosity, if you will. Again, you're one of those people I've known who can, approach any topic and just start completely blank. I know for sure I come with lots and lots and lots of preconceived notions. It's the tyranny of education in some sense. That I feel like I've learned, I've studied, I've read. I'm in MBA, I know so much. And so naturally when I come to a problem or issue in my life, I bring all these frames of references, theories, principles, guidelines that I've been taught. But you're someone who can literally take everything apart, start from scratch, and literally ground up start looking at something. What is this capacity? How did you acquire this capacity? How could others acquire this capacity?
This is again a question of understanding. When you say that, well, when I approach a subject, what are you doing at that point of time? You're thinking on that matter. Any matter which is there, you're thinking on that matter. How do you think? You think by questioning.
Sure.
Now, if you think by questioning, and if you say to yourself, consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously, I know, I have a perspective, and this fellow is bad, whatever, you are bringing at the time of thinking. Mind you, at the time of thinking, that's a limited time. It's not that 24 hours you're thinking. At the time of thinking, you are trying to raise the matter to a different level.
Sure.
To a higher level, to a more deeper perspective, whatever it is. You're trying to do that when you're thinking. So if you're really thinking, you're actually questioning. And if you're questioning and you come with a mindset that I know, consciously or subconsciously, how can you take that thinking to a different level?
Sure.
So you should come when you're thinking, when you're questioning. You should come, whatever your knowledge, whatever you may have, you may be a 𝐂𝐿 in that particular subject. But if you are now thinking on that subject,
sure,
you don't bring anything of the past. You come with the greatest humility to say that, well, I know nothing.
Sure.
I'm here to learn.
Sure.
If you have that mindset, then only you will learn and you will be able to take it to a much better level because you are now open to anything.
Sure.
This is the mindset which is the beginner's mindset or whatever you may say. That's the only mindset, to my mind, which will take you to a higher level.
So would you advocate in some sense then having two tables in your desk? One a thinking table and one a working table? When you're thinking, you can just sort of switch off from whatever you're doing.
You can try to do anything like that.
Sure.
But basically, first it is in your mind.
Sure.
And in your mind, don't forget that you're not thinking all the time.
Right.
You're thinking in a limited time.
Sure.
In that limited time, you're nobody.
Sure.
You just don't know anything.
Right.
And that's the mindset which gives you a much better perspective of the whole thing. You will also listen to whatever anybody is saying.
Sure.
Because at the time of that listening, if your mind is always, I know it.
Correct.
Then why are you wasting your time?
Thinking, yeah, sure. At that point in time, it's probably much better just to be acting since you already have a fair idea of what you need to do or whatever it is that you're thinking about.
Quite
sure,
right.
Sure.
Quite right.
So in some sense, separate, action from thinking.
Yes.
And then when you're thinking, have like this complete beginner's mind, childlike curiosity, Shoshin, which is a term in Zen Buddhism. That's kind of what you're saying. Fascinating. All right. Let's move on. There's another very, very interesting topic. And again, like I said, there's so much to learn from you. I remember as we were children, you taught us this concept of a steering wheel. And if I can sort of characterize what you used to say, I used to ask us and many others very famously, who has the steering wheel in their hand? Do you have your own steering wheel in your hand? Or does someone else have it in his or her hand? And I think you were kind of trying to help us understand that we are responsible for ourselves and we are responsible for what we feel and what we go through. And I should at no point in time allow anyone else, in some sense, to own or take accountability for that. Could you help us understand what you really meant? What is it that you're really trying to say? How do you practice it? What is this lesson?
See, you have to separate this from at different levels. The level is like this, that at the end you have probably a soul, you have a mind, you have a body, you have the activities that you do. Now all this, to my mind, comes from the mind. The mind is, the soul may be superior. I'm not going into this because I'm not an expert on this, by my little understanding, but it's the mind which is modulating all this.
Sure.
Now, if the mind is modulating all this, if you say to yourself, and this is what I have said to myself, mind says, have an ice cream. I'm not going to listen to the mind. I'm somebody superior to the mind.
Sure.
I will decide whether I'm going to have that ice cream or not.
Sure.
What does your mind do? The mind does three things. The mind is the center of three things, which is your thoughts, which is your feelings and emotions, and which is your desires.
Sure.
And if you look at any problem that anybody has in life, it is related to only these three things.
Sure.
It is your unfulfilled desires which give you problem. It's your feelings and emotions. Who said something like that? It's your thoughts. Now, can you be superior to all this?
Sure.
And that is what is the staring in my own hand.
Sure.
He has told me something and I will be upset. Then that other person is controlling me, na?
Sure.
Who would like to have somebody else controlling you? But you are giving that steering in somebody else's hand.
Correct, exactly.
So in all these three things, you must understand that the mind is these three things, and I must be superior to the mind. Whether it is the soul, it is consciousness, it is some other power, I don't know. But I will not allow my thoughts, my feelings and desires to override me any matter that I'm doing. And the day I'm able to do that, I definitely have my steering in my hand.
Sure. So actually what you're saying is even more fascinating than, perhaps even the understanding that I had. Because I think I came to this conversation with this notion of you and other, right? So someone else having your steering wheel in their hand versus you having the steering wheel in your hand. But I think you've taken this definition even beyond, because you're saying even within you, there are two yous. There is the mind and then there is the self or consciousness or whatever you want to call it. And you are in some sense controlling your mind from that self. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I really do not know whether it's a different, it's a soul or whatever it is. But I would say to myself, if the mind is saying, I am examining what the mind is saying.
Sure.
I am not allowed, maybe the mind itself is then allowing me to do that better.
Sure.
But whether it's the soul, I cannot say that to you.
Sure.
Mind may say so many things to me. Mind means what? My feeling and emotion. Chalo, he's been bad to me, I'll be bad to him.
Sure.
It's mind is saying, then you examine whether I should be bad to him or even worse to him.
Sure.
You decide, na? Don't allow that mind
to
alone
decide, sure.
to decide all that, you see. So you have to be superior to yourself,
Sure.
which is superior to your mind. That's the way I have looked.
That's fascinating because, like I said, I came to this conversation thinking of this as you and the other, but you're talking about you, the other, and, between you itself.
Yes.
There are sort of different levels.
Yes.
And you need to regulate your mind in order that, you can sort of be what you are. That's really fascinating. All right. Let's change topics again. We meet people all the time. I know I meet people on a regular basis, and oftentimes I just make a statement, I'll send you something, or I'll do something, or I promise I'll do something. And I think we're fairly casual about it. I don't think even the other person has taken you very seriously. I certainly have not taken myself very seriously. I think it's just a conversation I was having. I said I'd send you a book, for example. I don't really think I had any intention to send it. But from what I know of you, you're very different. If you've said something, the entire world will fall apart if you don't actually keep your word. And it can be very trivial. It can be, something as trivial as sending a book, or it can be something very major. What is this sort of thing? How does it matter? You said to somebody you would send a book. I'm sure even they forgot.
It matters to me. How does it matter to me? If I am not in charge of myself, then what am I in charge of? If I cannot control myself, what am I trying to control? What am I trying to influence? What am I trying to do? So if I say something, you say it in a joke, that's a different thing. But 99% of the time when you are having a conversation and things like that, it's not a joke. No?
Sure.
You're saying something to somebody, "Theek, I'll send you a book, or I'll do this for you." It's not a joke.
Sure.
You're saying something. So to me, if I say something, it's like my word, my law. It should be better than execution of a law.
Sure.
This is how it is. And how does it help me? It helps me because if I say something and I do it, the other person will trust me.
Sure, there's credibility, yeah, sure.
Your credibility is there. Your credibility is, at the end, credibility is what? Credibility is not first money. Credibility is your word.
Sure.
So if I have said something, I must do it. I must do it because I am responsible for myself.
Sure.
And it has various good dimensions for you. Because if you said it, people know. Today, if there is anything that I have, is people believe that I am a credible person.
Sure.
How has it come? Because if you have said something, you'll
do it, exactly.
You're not able to do it, you'll go and tell him.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to do it. I'm not able to do it in time.
Sure.
And that shows that you are in self-control.
But I'm sure you must be having at least 50 secretaries. You must be having some method. How is it possible that you remember every single time?
You remember because you are responsible and you're serious about it.
No, but are you telling me you don't have 50 secretaries?
No. You say it and you have to remember it. That's it. That's you formed into a habit.
Right.
I feel very uncomfortable if I've said something and I do not do it.
So how did you cultivate the habit? Like you're saying, it's nice to say or argue that credibility depends on your ability to keep your word. But, like I said, we say so many things all the time. How is it possible for you to actually keep that?
Maybe you are not responsible for yourself, or you do not understand what it means to be responsible to yourself. How it came, I really do not know how
Sure.
it came to me, how this habit came to me. But this habit has been there.
Sure.
In a way, probably I was blessed in the sense that many of the things that I say, just acquired them as I go along. One of the things which my family allowed me to do was to question.
Sure.
You could question anything.
Sure.
And so that questioning gave you a lot of clarity. Whatever you are doing is doing to the extent you understand things. No?
No, wonderful. It's definitely something that I'm going to try and do. At least I can't say that I'm somebody who could 100% of the time say something and just follow through. You forget, you get other priorities, you get sort of pulled away into different things. Other things become more important to you. And so sometimes you forget. I think it's a fantastic learning for me as well, that your credibility actually ultimately depends on it. And the other person may not even be telling you. You may have promised something and you may have forgotten. And the other person simply is just not been polite enough not to remind you. But that doesn't mean that your credibility did not get affected. So now again, this has been fascinating. It's been wonderful. I mean, like I could spend the next 3 days sitting here and chatting with you. But I think we've learned a lot. I think I have actually benefited. There's been a very sharp refinement in my understanding of some of these things that you've spoken about. For a very long time, I think ever since we were children, you've been talking about this. I remember every Sunday you would sort of pull us aside and spend hours talking about topics like this. And that's also in some sense grooming for us in many ways. So I think it's been really useful to have this conversation with you. Before we part, I want to say one more thing. I think it's also a lesson that I want to share with the others. What happens as you're growing up, you forget to say I love you. And you forget to say I love you at least to your parents. It's almost in some sense taken for granted. So I know my son tells me he loves me at least 4 times a day. And I don't know if I've had enough of an opportunity to say it to you. And I think I saw no better platform than this to genuinely, from the heart, kind of acknowledge how much you had a role in my life. And if there's anything that we are, or anything that we've become, anything that we've been able to do in our lives, it's been a large function of the fact that, you've taught us the right values, you've taught us the right sort of ways to behave. You made sure that we were, very gently without pulling and pushing too much. We just made sure that we did the right thing. So, on camera in front of, hopefully millions of people watching, I really want to say how much Mom and Dad, both of you, mean to me. Genuinely from the heart. I, of course, but I know everyone else who is my sibling. We genuinely love you.
No, thank you very much, because this is the thing that I'm proud of, that all my children are good human beings. And there cannot be anything better for a parent than to say that, I have 4 children who are very good human beings.
Sure. Thank
you.
Lovely having you.